Hello and welcome back to BCOM Chapter 4 this time, Preparing Spoken and Written Messages. If you look at figure 4.1 on page 57 of the textbook, you'll notice that we've looked at the first 4 of 6 steps in planning and preparing spoken and written messages. We're now going to cover the last 2 steps, titled Preparing the First Draft and then Revising and Proofreading for accuracy and desired impact. Let's start with the first step in Chapter 4, which is actually the 5th step in a 6-step plan. Preparing the first draft. And let me read to you from the textbook, page 56. Normally it says, writing rapidly with intent to rewrite certain portions if necessary is better than slow, deliberate writing with the intent to avoid any need for rewriting portions. I find that students who employ this method profit from it greatly. The idea is to get the material into your mind and to think about it, and then to write as quickly as possible. Get as much material down as you can. I call it free flow writing. It's basically where you sit down at a typewriter for 20 or 30 minutes and you say, for these 20 or 30 minutes, I'm going to type on my material as quickly as I possibly can to get it out. Just to type it down. If distracting thoughts come to your mind, you begin typing those up for just a moment and then quickly move back to the purpose of your paper. Just start typing and keep typing. It forces you to get something on the paper. You will go back later and edit it out, but obviously it's best to get information down that you can edit out than to sit and crack your skull and wonder, what am I going to type now? So the textbook also talks about preparing a very fast first rough draft. Obviously it works best if you've done your research, if you've prepared your outline, if you've done all of your planning, then to sit down and to type quickly your first rough draft, not worrying about mistakes at all, gets you something to begin with. So you type quickly the first rough draft. The textbook also talks about crafting powerful sentences, and it suggests that you rely on the active voice. Now, we talked briefly about the active voice in the last chapter, but in this chapter we take another good look at it because it's such an important element of good writing style. The passive voice is when the subject of the sentence is being acted upon. The active voice is when the subject of the sentence is actually doing the action itself. Now, the textbook gives you a number of different examples. I'll invite you to take a look at the textbook so that you can understand fully what the difference between the passive and the active voice is. Be able to look at a sentence and decide, is this passive or is this active? The more you can develop good active writing, the tighter your writing will be, the better your writing will be, and the stronger your business communication. The textbook goes on to emphasize and to suggest that we emphasize important ideas, and many times repetition is the best way to do this, as long as we don't become redundant and overemphasize. But the textbook also offers some other useful ideas that would be helpful to you. And then the textbook talks about developing coherent paragraphs. Usually the first sentence in a paragraph is the subject sentence, and that's the one that sets the course for the rest of the paragraph. So when you write a paragraph, the key concept of that paragraph should be found in the first sentence. The rest of the paragraph, you explain what you meant by the first sentence. Once you have paragraphs put together, then you arrange the paragraphs so that they make sense. Usually the first paragraph of a document explains what the rest of the document is about. The last paragraph of a document explains what you've been trying to say in that document or message. All of the middle paragraphs should support the main point that you're trying to make in the first paragraph, and each idea should follow logically the previous paragraph. So you start with an introductory paragraph to a message, And then your second paragraph should be your first idea, which leads to another paragraph, the second idea, which leads to another paragraph, the third idea, which leads to a final summary paragraph, summarizing or finalizing your document. By keeping the paragraphs coherent and together and linked well by logic, you actually create a stronger document. Varying sentence length and paragraph length can also be useful. It's just very helpful for the reader to not feel like they're reading very mechanically through material. So you don't want to have sentences of all the same length, paragraphs of all the same length. Vary these. It helps your reader to move through. Then we come to the sixth and final step of planning and preparing a written or spoken document, and that is to revise and to proofread what you have done. The concepts here are really very simple. You want to now go through your document, your rough draft, and make certain that you've not made mistakes of any kind. One of the concepts in the textbook is the fog index, which suggests that some of the word processing programs available today have indexes in them that will help define how difficult your reading material is. It will give to you some kind of an indication as to what grade level, for example, your writing has been. You take a look at the textbook, get an idea of what most common audiences, their grade level is going to be at, and then write toward that grade level to where people will understand the material you're writing. Using visual enhancements can also be very important. Depending upon the kind of writing you're doing and who you're writing to and the purpose of your writing, visual enhancements can create interest in the reader and clarify your message. So using such things as enumeration with numbers 1, 2, 3 or bulleted marks. Indenting is also very helpful, drawing lines or borders. Headings, I always encourage students to use headings in material because it does outline quickly for the reader what they're looking at. Tables and graphs can also be very important and helpful. Relevant images. All of these go together to create more interesting reading and helpful reading for the one who is looking at your message. Then we come to a section of the textbook beginning on page 66, in which we discuss systematic procedures for revising and for proofreading. And I'm going to read through each of these individually because I think they're very helpful and very useful as we take a look at them. We start by using spell check. Obviously, when you're finished with your rough draft, the first thing you want to do is make sure your spelling is taken care of. Now, you can't fully use spell check and expect that everything is going to be taken care of as far as spelling is concerned, because some words read the same but are spelled differently. There, T-H-E-R-E or T-H-E-I-R. For, F-O-R-E or F-O-R or F-O-U-R. All of these spellings are different and would be passed by a spell check machine on your software, but in fact it depends on the context in which the words are used. So you must read very carefully the text to make sure that words that might be approved by a spell check program are in fact correctly spelled for the context. The text also talks about proofreading the document on screen before you print it, concentrating first on errors in content, organization, and style. Make sure that your reading has a good flow to it. Make sure that as you read through the material that the ideas are connected logically. Make sure that the content is correct. Make sure that everything seems to flow very smoothly. Many times it will be useful if you have a proofreader read your material, and we'll talk about this in just a moment. But the first good read on screen should be to cover content and organization and style. Then read through it again, this time looking for mechanical errors, such as grammar, such as punctuation, such as syntax. All of these things must be discovered, and so by looking at it again on screen, you're trying to find those. Now, once again, many software programs will have grammar check as well as spell check, and use that to your advantage. But that should not mean that you don't have to proofread it yourself. You do. You have to know that what you're saying is correct and sounds good to you. I encourage students to read their material slowly and out loud, because many times the eye will skip a mistake that you have written and the ear will catch it. So if you'll read it out loud and listen to what you're reading, you may find grammatical errors that you may not find just using your eyes. Then the textbook suggests you print a draft copy and go through it again to make sure that everything is as correct as possible. Finally, we come to the use of a proofreader, and I have to confess that more times than I would like, I suggest to students that they find someone to read their material for them and help them. You see, there's an issue called a writer's pride of ownership that the textbook talks about. We tend to be very proud of what we have written and feel like we're beyond mistake, we're beyond error, and we skip over our own mistakes and errors. We don't notice them. And we become so proud of our material, we don't feel like it needs to be checked again by anyone else. But the truth is, we're all human, and we all make mistakes, and usually someone else can see our mistakes more quickly than we can. So having someone else read it will help you to make sure that your material is as correct as you can possibly make it. These are some very good ideas for preparing and planning your written and spoken material. Take a good look at these 2 chapters, because as we continue in the course and come to some of our writing assignments, you will want to follow these procedures as you prepare your material. The more you can do these things on a consistent, regular basis with all of your writing, the stronger your writing will become and the better communicator you will be. And that's just good business.